Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome in Berlin zu unserer Reihe Can Lit Talks, in der wir kanadische Bücher erkunden möchten. 320 kanadische Bücher sind in 148 deutschsprachigen Verlagen erschienen aus Anlass des Ehrengastauftritt Kanadas bei der Frankfurter Buchmesse. Leider können die Autorinnen und Autoren nicht nach Deutschland kommen, dann gehen wir denen einfach virtuell entgegen, besuchen sie auf kanadischem Boden hier in der kanadischen Botschaft in Berlin. And we are going to do this in a vivid variety of languages as the Canadians do. Some English, some French. Wir werden auf jeden Fall dafür Sorge tragen, dass Sie alles verstehen, wenn wir Ihnen die Bücher vorstellen heute von Sophie Bienvenu und Michelle Winters, und diese Vorstellung übernehmen begeisterte Leserinnen aus dem deutschen Buchhandel. Zunächst Maria Lucia Klöcker aus der Buchhandlung Weltenleser in Frankfurt, die uns den Roman Sam ist weg von Sophie Bienvenu vorstellt.
Sam ist weg von Sophie Bienvenu ist eine Geschichte, zu der ich, ohne es vorher gewusst zu haben, eine besondere Beziehung habe. Denn wie in diesem Roman über Mathieu und die Pitbull-Hündin Sam hieß auch mein erster Hund Sammy. Aber wir nannten ihn auch Samuel oder Sam. Meinen Mischlingsrüden Sam hatte ich ebenfalls aus dem Tierheim und auch in ihm steckte ein Pitbull. Auch Sammy und ich kennen sehr aneinander und deshalb habe ich anfangs gezögert, das Buch von Sophie Bienvenu zu lesen. Sam ist weg. Das klingt nämlich so, als könne man diese Geschichte gar nicht aushalten. Jeder, dessen Hund schon mal verschwunden war, kennt den Schock, die Verzweiflung, die Angst, die der Ich-Erzähler Mathieu erlebt, als er aus dem Spätkauf tritt und feststellt, Sam ist weg. Mathieu lebt seit 2 Jahren auf der Straße, er ist kein Abenteurer, er hat dieses Leben bewusst so für sich gewählt. Und seine treue Gefährtin ist die Hündin Sam. Sie hilft ihm, die Leere zu ertragen, sie wärmt ihn, wenn die innere Kälte ihn durchdringt, und sie beruhigt ihn, wenn Mathieu ihr klopfendes Herz unter seiner Hand spürt. Mathieu begibt sich also auf die Suche nach Sam, und während er durch Montreals Straßen irrt, folgt der Leser seinen Gedanken und Erinnerungen. Er dringt in Mathieu's Welt ein, in seine Vergangenheit, und erfährt seine Schicksalsschläge und lernt sein großes Bedürfnis nach Liebe und Zuneigung kennen. Sam ist alles, was Mathieu noch geblieben ist. Sie, so sagt er, ist mein besseres Drittel. Sie hält mich am Leben, auch wenn ich manchmal nicht mehr kann. Der Roman ist wie ein Monolog geschrieben. Man muss ihn zu Ende hören, das heißt, man muss das Buch in einem Zug auslesen. Nicht nur, weil man das Ende erfahren möchte, sondern auch, weil einem Mathieu ans Herz gewachsen ist. Das Buch ist in viele kurze Kapitel eingeteilt und das macht die Geschichte lebendig, zumal auch innerhalb der Kapitel viel direkte Rede verwendet wird. Die Sprache ist ziemlich direkt und nicht die eines gebildeten jungen Mannes, der sich gewählt ausdrückt. Und doch weiß Mathieu, wie man sich ausdrückt. Man merkt, dass er nicht auf der Straße groß geworden ist. Ich empfehle dieses Buch, weil ich glaube, dass es einen nach der Lektüre nachdenklich stimmt. Man wird nicht mehr ungerührt und unberührt an einem Obdachlosen vorbeigehen, man wird sich zumindest für einen kurzen Moment bewusst werden, dass dieser Mensch, der mit seinem Hund da am Boden hockt, auch ein Leben davor hatte und dass es Gründe gibt, weshalb er auf der Straße gelandet ist und dass statt einiger Cent manchmal auch ein Gespräch gut täte. Abgesehen davon ist das Buch warmherzig und berührend und völlig neutral und ohne gehobenen Zeigefinger geschrieben.
And now I have the pleasure of speaking with Sophie Bienvenu in Montreal and Michelle Winters in Toronto. Welcome to the both of you.
Thank you.
Sophie, although this exchange via the internet has become something like our everyday business, let's not forget the charm and the magic of it. We just heard a German bookseller praising your book about a homeless man in Montreal. What does it mean to you?
Well, when I first wrote the novel, it's my second novel, I had no idea that this story could or would travel so far and touch so many people from the different horizons. So it's really meaningful for me to hear it.
Mm-hmm. We developed the idea that we want to explore the books of yours and thereby exploring the places you live, a little bit of Canadian culture, and therefore we sent a questionnaire to the both of you, and we will use this questionnaire now, as I said, to explore your book. And our first question is, if you could take us through your book, for example, as we would be doing is walking through a city, to which place, to which setting of your book would you take us?
Well, I would go down with you just right there, the Rue Masson that I wrote in my book. It's like 30 seconds from my place. And it's a very lively street with like many a bookstore, like groceries. You have really it's really nice. It's a really nice place to live, and that's where I met Mathieu, the real Mathieu, not the one in the book, but the one that helped me writing my book, because I didn't know what it was like to live in the streets at the time. So I had to go and meet someone who lived in the streets. So that's when I met when and where I met Mathieu. So it's a place that has many memories and mixed feelings, but that's definitely where I would bring you.
Helped you in what way? You just said he helped you in writing. In what way did he help you?
Yeah, but because I didn't know what it was. I had my story. I knew that I knew everything about Mathieu's story that I would write in the book, but I didn't know what it was like to live in the streets. So at first I thought maybe I could just take my dog and go sleep on a bench like for a night or two, but I thought it was a little bit artificial, because at any time I could go back to my place and like have a hot shower. So I used my my very thin experience as a journalist, and I go and I asked a guy who lived in the street who had a dog that I met, just said hi like quite a few times before it, and I asked him to share with me what it was like for him to live in the street with the dog and stuff, and we saw each other like 10 times maybe to do that, and I can say now that we became friends, and we came to have an importance in each other's lives that we didn't know we had at the time. So it was a really precious relationship.
Mm. Your book tells the story of Mathieu, a homeless man who one day discovered that his female pit bull dog Sam has disappeared, and he tries to find the dog walking the streets of Montreal. And while he's doing so, we learn about his past, the reasons why he ended up being homeless. And there is I would say, limited set of characters. Which character in the book would you describe to be the typical Canadian, and why?
Oh my God, I think Mathieu is typically a Quebecer, but is there? I will ask you the question: is there such a thing as a typical, like, Canadian or Quebecer? That's difficult for me to answer that, because it is so diverse. Like, here in Montreal, it's more diverse than in the rest of Quebec. But to play the game, I would say that Mathieu is a typical Quebecer, and that's why I was very attentive. I don't know if it's the right way to say it, but to the language that I used for him, for him to be more like typical Quebecer.
I understand this. Reading your book, I had the feeling that it derives a lot of its language from the spoken language.
Yes, totally. It's spoken language from A to Z, because it's like, when you read it, you're in Mathieu's head. So he thinks like a guy who did not go to school very long, and yeah, as I said, a typical Quebecer.
Yeah, I reading your book, I realized that this question about what is typical Canadian in your book would not leave that far, because Mathieu is a character which gives you the feeling, okay, it only takes a short line of misfortunes, and what happens to him can happen to each and every one of us. Was this an idea you wanted to stress with this story of a homeless man?
Well, at first, I wanted to talk about dogs. That was my first idea about this book. I wanted to try and give pit bulls less of a bad rap. So that, because I had two at the time, now I just have one. But so that was my goal. And when I thought about the story of a homeless man and the dog, that became more, and that I kind of feel that at this time when it went out, the book went out, it went out of my hands, and people started to say that it was a book about homeless people, and I was like, sure, not okay, that's fine. I wanted to talk about dogs, but if it helps people to acknowledge and to realize that, as you said, it could happen to any of us, that's fine for me.
The next question is, are there any details in your book that are Canadian insider knowledge, some Canadian popular culture, or something that is specifically Canadian? Something maybe that would be worth a footnote for German readers.
Well, there's a song about, if I remember correctly, about Leonard Cohen, but like everybody knows him. But it's nice to know, I don't think everyone knows that he's from Montreal originally. So there's that. And I don't have anything else, because I feel that, and I see it because now it's translated in English and it's in German, and I feel that the story, except from the location, like as I told you, Montreal, that is a kind of a character in the book, the town, the streets and stuff. But I feel that it's a book that you can read and feel like it's you, feel like it's home, feel like that it's around you, it happens around you. So I don't feel like there's something really Québécois about it.
But now we learn a new word, Québécois. After your book has been published in Canada, were there any comments in the reviews or any comments of readers which were particularly important to you?
Yeah, there was. Well, I just told you that at first I didn't want particularly to speak about homeless people. That it was kind of a vessel for me to talk about dogs. But a few months after the book was out, I had a book fair, and a girl who was working at the shelter for homeless youngsters came to me and said, I'm a little bit emotional when I talk about it, so excuse me, but she told me that the guy, the youngs that who lived in the streets, so that's my kid, so the young people that lived in the streets, sorry about that.
Don't worry, we all have kids, you know, that's
yes. That they were exchanging the book, and with notes in it, in the margins that said like, oh, don't read it if you're sad. So watch out. The next part is a little dark. So wait for it if you're sad, and comments for others. And the book is like very thin, and it doesn't have a cover anymore, because like it has been in the hands of like maybe 50 people who don't read it's not people who like go to the library and pick up a book, so they just the same book goes from hand to hand, and it's very precious for me to know that.
The motto of the Canadians' appearance at the Frankfurt Book Fair is singular plurality, singulier pluriel. How do you understand this motto in relation to your work in particular, or to Canadian literature in general?
Well, that will sound like what I told you earlier, but I feel that when you read a story from a single a person, that literature for me is universal. So you can read the story of a guy who lives in Montreal and who's lost everything, and feel like you connect with him. So I feel that this thing relates to that. This slogan or motto relates to that, I feel.
my thoughts are still in the story you told about this one copy of the book handed from one reader to the other. I would like to ask you to read a passage
Yes.
from the book, and then we change the subject a little bit.
Yeah, maybe something more cheerful. So I will read the first chapter, the first 2 pages. Avant, Sam et moi, on se calait dans l'entrée du magasin de tissus qui a brûlé sur maçon. On pouvait étaler nos shit sans qu'elles partent au vent, ça fait qu'on avait un peu l'impression d'être chez nous. Sam dormait dans le coin, même que les gens s'arrêtaient pour me demander « Il est où ton chien ?» tellement on la voyait pas de la rue. C'était un bon spot, mais on n'a pas pu rester là trop longtemps parce qu'ils ont commencé à faire des travaux en dedans pour mettre je sais pas quoi à la place du magasin de tissus. Peut-être un resto. Sûrement un resto. Avant ça, on était souvent en avant du poivre et sel. C'est un bon endroit, mais justement trop. Une fois, on était même 4 à quêter. Moi pis Sam, le vieux avec sa casquette, le gars avec sa guitare puis son chien loup, et un petit noir qui vendait du chocolat pour son école. Évidemment, le kid nous clenchait tous, fait qu'on s'est tanné et on a voulu aller prendre une pointe de pizza en mettant toute notre cash ensemble. Le vieux a essayé de nous crosser, l'autre gars s'est énervé après. Gérant de la place nous a chassés en menaçant d'appeler la police. Dehors, ça a dégénéré. Ils se sont mis à se taper dessus en se traitant d'hostie de voleur. Le chien loup essayait de pogner les mollets de lait du vieux, mais comme il était attaché, il se rendait pas, jusqu'à ce que les 2 gars se ramassent à terre, où là, il a réussi à lui mordre l'avant-bras. Le vieux s'est mis à gueuler « Rappelle ton chien! Rappelle ton chien! » Il essayait de fesser dedans, mais ça donnait rien. Il s'est pissé dessus et s'est tourné sur le ventre pour se cacher le visage. Le gars a crié « Lâche !» et son chien a lâché. Il l'a détaché et il est parti en gueulant et en se retournant une couple de fois pour être sûr que ses insultes se rendaient bien où elles étaient supposées. Le vieux s'est assis appuyé contre le mur. Il frottait son avant-bras en chignant comme un kid qui s'est fait péter à gueule alors que c'était lui qui avait cherché le trouble à la base. Le peu de monde qu'il y avait dans la rue à cette heure-là, en plein après-midi, un jour de semaine, s'était attroupé autour pour être bien sûr de bien voir. D'un coup qu'il y en ait un des 2 qui tue l'autre ou quoi. C'est pas tous les jours qu'on a la chance d'être témoin d'un meurtre. Une fille s'est approchée du vieux et s'est agenouillée à côté. « Monsieur, ça va? Je vais prendre votre bras pour regarder ce qu'il y a, c'est correct? » Les autres trouvaient ça dégueulasse, ça se voyait. Il y en avait qui la trouvaient courageuse, il y en avait qui se faisaient croire que si elle y était pas allée, ils y seraient allés, eux. Mais la vérité, c'est que tous, ils trouvaient ça dégueulasse. Parce que les itinérants, tu peux leur donner de l'argent, tu peux leur faire un sourire ou même leur demander comment ça va, mais tu peux jamais, jamais, jamais les toucher. Parce que tu as beaucoup trop peur que notre misère s'attrape.
Du kannst Obdachlosen nämlich Kleingeld geben. Du kannst ihnen zulächeln. Du kannst sie sogar fragen, wie es ihnen geht. Aber anfassen, nein, das geht nicht. Im Leben nicht. Weil du viel zu viel Schiss hast. Unser Elend könnte ansteckend sein. Das ist die Stimme von Mathieu, die in ihrer Traurigkeit, aber auch in ihrer Trotzigkeit wunderbar ins Deutsche übersetzt worden ist von Sonja Fink und Frank Weigand in dem Roman von Sophie Bienvenu. Sam ist weg. Thank you, but that was very impressive. And as I say, we changed the subject a little bit because now, as we are broadcasting this program on International Women's Day, the 8th of March, I welcome back into our talk now Michelle Winters, and I want to point or explore the subject of feminism a little bit. What would you say? What was the first time when you in your lives came across ideas of feminism? Michelle.
I think it happened fairly early. I remember being a girl and starting to understand that I wasn't, that you're even with boys to a certain point, and then you're like, oh no, we can't do the same things anymore. And I got very angry about it very young. I was probably 5. And then I can remember as things got more uneven, I started fighting with boys. I started competing with boys. I can remember racing a boy on figure skates. I was wearing figure skates and he was wearing speed skates, and I would not let him win. it happened very young, and it's not slowing down.
What about you, Sophie?
Well, I was born in Belgium, but I grew up in France, and I arrived here in Quebec. I was 21. And for me, being French, feminism was like a curse word. So it's nearly 20 years ago, and so for me, when I arrived in Quebec, and I must say here in Quebec, the situation of women is much better than in France, but it was not normal for me to see that. So I thought that, my God, here women are the boss, and that's what I felt. So feminism for like maybe 10 years for me was like, I didn't see the point. So maybe 10 years after that, I started to learn more about feminism and to see the discrepancies and the differences that are still here in the Quebec society, but more in France when I look back. And that's when I started to read and to learn about feminism, and looking back to my past, to see what Michelle just described that I didn't see before, because it was normal for me that, you know, I was a girl. So if I wanted to do something for the boys, like it was not normal, but that was normal for it not to be normal. So, and yeah, maybe 10 years ago, I started to read and to learn. And now I must say that I am quite the feminist. So it's for me, it's like Simone de Beauvoir said her most famous quote: "One does not being born a feminist, one becomes it." I don't know if I'm translated okay, but yeah, for me that was it. That was that.
We can take an easy way of going deeper into this idea of feminism by exploring a little bit more of Michelle Winter's book, I Am a Truck, which is now going to be presented to us by Stefanie Cravel from the bookshop Lesesaal in Hamburg.
Hi, mein Name ist Stefanie Cravel von der unabhängigen Buchhandlung Lesesaal in Hamburg. Ich freue mich heute, das Buch Ich bin ein Laster, auf Englisch I'm a Truck, von Michelle Winters vorzustellen. Letztes Jahr erschien im Wagenbach Verlag in der kongenialen Übersetzung von Barbara Schaden. Es ist erschienen, also im Rahmen der Neuerscheinung für Kanada als Gastland auf der Frankfurter Buchmesse. Worum geht es? Die Protagonistinnen sind Agathe und Régent Lapointe. Ihre Geschichte spielt in den 70er und 80er Jahren im kanadischen Akadien. Sie stehen kurz vor der Feier ihres 20. Hochzeitstages, als plötzlich der heißgeliebte schwarze Chevrolet Silverado von Régent verlassen am Straßenrand steht. Agathe trauert und lässt sich auf dies und das ein, hat Spaß mit ihrer Kollegin Debbie, macht ordentlich auf englischen Rock'n'Roll und baut auch eine Beziehung zu Martin Bureau auf, der wohl der einzige Freund von Régent ist und vielleicht weiß, wo sich oder was mit Régent passiert ist. Mir hat besonders gefallen, dass die Kapitel abwechselnd im Jetzt und das Davor die aktuelle Situation beschreiben und den Hintergrund liefern. Das macht die Geschichte rasant und spannend. Es geht auch um den Clash der anglo- und frankophonen Kultur in Kanada. Besonders ist dabei, dass die Übersetzerin Barbara Schaden manche Sätze stehen gelassen hat in der ursprünglichen Version. Zum Beispiel J'ai besoin d'un gun. Ich brauche eine Waffe. Es geht um Chevy und Ford, es geht um französischen Folk und englischen Rock, immer wieder pointiert und mit hintergründigem Witz. Michelle Winters gelingt hier eine atmosphärische Geschichte über die Möglichkeiten und Unmöglichkeiten von Liebe und Loyalität, originell erzählt mit Humor und Spannung. Passend vom Verlag angekündigt, eine Kriminalliebesgeschichte voller lustiger Begebenheiten und kurioser Wendungen. Tschüss!
Stefanie Kravé von der Buchhandlung Lesesaal in Hamburg. I think you two have met already, Stefanie Kravé and you, Michelle.
Yeah. We had a chat a few months back, just talking about the book. She's been terrific.
Isn't that you know, for me, this always has a special magic aura. A book is written somewhere in the world and it finds enthusiastic readers somewhere else, readers you would never have thought about, you know, this Stefanie from Hamburg, you know. When was the last time the word Hamburg went through your mind?
It's so exciting. I can't tell you. And the idea too, that there is because it's a strange book, and to find that there's a sensibility in Germany where it really somehow has taken off. That there's an understanding.
It's a strange book, but as well as Sophie's book, it's a thrilling book because both of you have the same trick at the beginning. Someone disappears. Sam disappears, and in your case, it's Régent who disappears, the man in this couple, and then one thing that keeps us reading throughout the novel is what happened. What happened to Régent? How did this story? How did this idea of structuring the book came to you, Michelle?
You know, I started writing this book when I was in a relationship with a person who was emotionally absent. And rather than leave the relationship and do the smart thing, I stayed, but I thought I'm going to need to describe the feeling of trying to love somebody who is there but not there. And it, like, so much of my writing is about anger and urgency. So the urgent thing was describing the feeling of loving a person who isn't there. And as I started to, you know, get the feelings expressed, I had been working on another story with Agathe as a character, and I brought her in and started attributing the story to her, and then I thought, I'm going to make this a story about a missing man. It's a story about somebody who's not there. But I thought, why not make it an exciting story and not a miserable, sad story about a bad relationship, and make him the missing man. And I pursued that, and I didn't know originally what happened to him. I just started writing from the perspective of somebody who's lost this person and has no idea where he's going.
Let's explore your novel like we did with Sophie by going to the surroundings and learning about the plot. As I asked before, if you could take us into your book, as we would do so walking in a city, to which place or which setting would you take us?
I would take you to an Atlantic Canada kitchen where everything happens and everybody lives and everybody hangs out. It's where it's where Agathe and Régent spend most of their time there. It's where they talk, it's where they make love, it's where they eat, and there's so much that's about food, and it's where they play cards. And if you go to a party in the Maritimes, if you go to a party in Canada to a large extent, because I know it's true in Montreal as well, people hang out in the kitchen. I think the kitchen is really sort of endemic of a Canadian feel that I think is important to understand about Canadian literature.
We're getting more Canadian here. So maybe this next question also works well. Which character in your book would you describe as being the most typical Canadian, and why?
It's funny that I do think of the two characters that I would go between would be Agathe and Debbie, and it's funny that Agathe and Debbie are the ones who emblematize Canada, I suppose. But I think that Agathe has a foot in the past and a foot in the future. You know, she's reaching out. She's hanging on to something that she loves, but she is excited for change and reaching out for it all the time, and curious, which is the way I want to think of Canada, as being endlessly curious.
I have to confess, I was absolutely sure that you would say Régent because he is a lumberjack.
Oh.
And if it, you know, if it's maybe it's a cliche from me as a German reader, but as we hardly have any lumberjacks here in Germany, I think that is one of the Canadian professions.
That's very true. It's very true. It's also the couple themselves are based on a real life couple, and the husband in the real life couple was a giant and a lumberjack.
A couple who starts their life as a couple in the French-speaking part of Canada, and then, because of work reasons, has to move to the English-speaking part. And the place where they lived before is called Petit Village. Is this a real place, or did you make it up?
I made it up. I need a certain amount of freedom in my writing. I use Atlantic Canada and I use Acadian culture, but I need to know that I can make up everything that I want to about that town. So Petit Village, yeah. And the thing about the Maritimes and its bilingualism is that, you know, you said a part of Canada that's English and a part of Canada that's French. In the Maritimes, they're side by side. Agathe and Régent would have moved from Petit Village to Pinto, which is also made up and is the name of a car. And that would be, you know, a 3-minute drive, probably to an all English, between an all English and an all French speaking town. Yeah.
And that would even be the best use of a footnote. Wouldn't it, to explain to non-Canadian readers this closeness of these villages, towns, and so on?
That's an excellent point. That I would, to a non-Canadian reader, I would want them to understand the cadence of the speech and the layout of the land. Okay,
if I'm not wrong, I answered 2 of your questions. Let's come back to the question. Is there a word, a special expression, a phrase, a sentence in the book that immediately comes to you when you think about your book?
Yeah, there's a line that I had to cut. There's a lot of lines that I had to cut. This was as my first novel. It started very bulky and it became very lean. But one of the lines that I had to cut was a line about Debbie that said that nothing could stop her steamroller progress into the yonder. That's what I feel describes the whole book. It's this momentum and the incredible momentum of Debbie.
Yeah, absolutely. And we leave the joy of meeting Debbie because she comes into the book in a later part. We leave the joy of meeting her to the readers and discovering her to the readers. After the book had been published in Canada, were there any comments in reviews or questions or remarks by readers which were particularly important to you?
Yeah, there were. and they were all, because it was my first book, and I'd never heard somebody else talk about my work. You know, I'd never heard an outside opinion of my work. So when this book came out, one of the reviews that we got for the back cover was from a writer named Stuart Ross, who compared it to a Coen Brothers movie.
Oh.
Yeah, and coming from writing it, where I'm thinking about them internally. I'm thinking about their motivations and feelings, and to have somebody take it out and look at it from that perspective, that it's this adventure that I really didn't see from my perspective.
Talking about this labels or mottos, the motto of the Canadian appearance at Frankfurt Book Fair is, as we all know, singular plurality. How do you understand this motto, and what does it mean to your writing?
I think, and it takes a second to sort of decipher that, because but it's really on the nose about Canada, is that it is our multitudes that are so unique, and our diversity, we are many and are unique as a result of that. And I think the book is reaching out to understand different things, to bridge a cultural gap, and to bridge gaps between people. The book is constantly reaching out. I think that is the singular plurality of its curiosity, of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
For Canadian literature, there is a particular way that we write, I think, where, and I'm thinking of the current Giller winner, how to pronounce knife, is from the perspective of a Laotian immigrant. So in Canadian literature, we really embrace this tiny perspective where you get to experience, the plurality through a very intimate aperture. And I think that's sort of where Canadian literature can excel.
I was when I read your book, I was also wondering whether you are trying to enforce contradictions in the sense of there are so many differences which oppose each other. Let's say one is drinking wine, the other one is drinking whiskey. One wants to listen to folk music, the other one wants to listen to rock and roll. It's French against Canadian, French against English, women against men somehow. So from these contradictions, your book gains a lot of power.
Yeah, I think it adds the tension, the constant duality of things against each other. Ford against Chevy too.
Yeah. And as I have the privilege to talk to you, in the German title is perfect because it has also another connotation. Laster, the German word Laster in Germany also means vice. So we can say I am a truck, and by the same time saying I am a vice. But still, when I saw I am a truck is one of the most unusual titles I came across in my reading life. How did you make up this title?
Okay. It's so interesting to hear you say that, because the title has never been quite as big a deal as it has been since it was published in Germany. And people, it's the first thing that reviews say is how ridiculous the title is. And that it's, they're like, it's a good book despite the title. So by vice, it means like a moral failing, right? Like
it's more a failing, but also it has, when you're talking about Agathe and Regent, who are together for 20 years, but still enjoy the sex with each other. You know, this is also adding to this. Oh, this is a very special couple.
Isn't that funny? And in English, like how the way I came up with it is, it was a very hard book to title. It's a book about resilience first and foremost, and but also a book about rock and roll, and also a book about trucks. So I found a song, like an old trucking song, called "I Am a Truck," which was the perfect title.
So may I also ask you to read a little bit from your novel to let us go into the original sound of it?
Absolutely. Rock and roll filled the truck as Agathe drifted out of a shallow nap. She smiled as she reached out for Régent, thinking he had changed his mind and put the music on for her, but she touched only his empty seat. The smell of toasted buns let her know that they were at Lobster Shack. Régent must have felt bad about the radio squabble and was buying her a lobster roll. There was a roadside stand for lobster rolls every few kilometers in Pinto, but Lobster Shack was her favorite. She kept her eyes closed and concentrated on the music she now realized was coming from the vehicle parked next to them. The loud, ominous song shuddered in, lifting her skin from her bones. She opened her eyes just enough to see the driver turn off the engine, holding the key in the ignition so the radio could go on playing. From where her head rested against the passenger side window, she looked directly at him, separated by their two window frames. He was a big man, dressed in army attire, singing along. He caught sight of Agathe's face propped against the frame. She grinned drowsily. The man turned in his seat and focused intently on her. He continued singing, to her, nodding more vigorously. The song had built to a peak. He pointed for her to sing with him, sing for the years, sing for the laughter, sing for the tears. She laughed despite herself, and her palms started to sweat. The drums announced something momentous, and the man held up a fist and sang for her to dream on until her dreams came true. Agathe laughed helplessly. She glanced at the driver's side mirror and saw Régent at the counter of the Lobster Shack up the hill. The man sang still higher, and as he did, he spread his fingers and let the song flood through, as though he had been holding it in his clenched fist, his voice disintegrating into an animal shriek. It was then she saw the dust kicking up behind Régent in the rearview mirror. Hey, va-t'en, she hissed, waving the man away with both hands. The man spread his palms in the same theatrical way he had with the pointing, and made a mock hurt face. Allez-y, she rasped more loudly. Il va te tuer. The man reacted to the change on her face and turned to see what caused it. Go, she shouted. At the sight of Régent's thunderous approach, the man threw the truck into gear, playfully shaking a scolding finger at Agathe. He peeled out of the lot, pointed meaningfully back at her, and raised his fist in the air. Régent slapped both hands against the door frame. Agathe, qu'est-ce qu'il t'a dit? Oh, Régent, she said, c'était un psycho. J'étais tellement scared, mais il est parti, il est parti. Régent reached through the window and gathered her up in his arms, and Agathe tried not to smile as she watched the man disappear down the road.
Thank you very much. Und was diese Episode mit dem spurlosen Verschwinden von Régent von einem Tag auf den anderen zu tun hat, das lesen Sie in der Übersetzung von Barbara Schaden. Ich bin ein Laster, Michel Winters, erschienen im Wagenbach Verlag. And while I'm holding up your novels, a last question of mine. If a bookshop in Germany is decorating its shop windows, with which other Canadian authors would you like to be decorated, the bookshop being decorated next to your book? Michel, what other books should surround yours? Canadian books.
It's all aspirational, of course, because I would like to believe that my book could be next to Bear by Marian Engel, which is a wonderful book. Bear. There's a book called Idaho Winter by Tony Burgess that I think is one of the strangest, most wonderful things I've ever read. And Barbara Gowdy, We So Seldom Look on Love.
What about you, Sophie?
Well, I would love for my books to be amongst the poetry of Joséphine Bacon, who is a poet from the nations here in Quebec, and her poetry is well, it's wonderful. It's what made me love poetry, reading her. And yeah, here in Quebec we have many authors that I love. My last how do you say coup de cœur in English was yeah, thank you, Michelle, was Là où je me terre, from Caroline Dawson, and I really hope that for German readers that it will be published in Germany, because it's one of the best books that I read in the last year.
Also meine Damen und Herren, ich hoffe, wir haben Ihnen damit ein bisschen Arbeit abgenommen, dahingehend, dass wenn Sie Buchhändlerin oder Buchhändler sind, dann wissen Sie jetzt dank der Fingerzeige der beiden Autorinnen, wie Sie Ihre Schaufenster dekorieren können. Und wenn Sie einfach nur großartige Bücher suchen, wissen Sie ja, die beste Dekoration für einen großartigen Roman ist, einfach den nächsten daneben zu legen. Und hier haben Sie zwei wirklich fantastische Bücher, mit denen Sie wunderbare Lesestunden verbringen können. Thank you very much to Montreal and to Toronto, and we hope that we're going to see you in Frankfurt in the fall.
We surely do hope so.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the pleasure I had reading your books.
Thank you.